Imagine for a moment that you're living in the 14th century. You're in a small village surrounded by your loved ones when suddenly people start getting sick. At first, you're not sure what's going on. But then, the symptoms become clear. Fever, chills, vomiting, and boils. Before you know it, half of your village is dead. This is the story of the Black Death, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. It swept across Europe in the 14th century, killing an estimated 25 million people. It was a time of fear, panic, and despair. But it was also a time of resilience, courage, and hope. The Black Death, a terrifying plague that wiped out approximately 1/3 of Europe's population, plunging the world into darkness, fear, and sorrow. The disease spread rapidly, with symptoms including painful swelling of lymph nodes, fever, and chills, causing death in a matter of days. Entire towns were wiped out, and the few survivors were left to deal with the aftermath of the pandemic. The Black Death, also known as the bubonic plague, had far-reaching consequences, changing the course of history and altering social, economic, and political structures. The pandemic brought about significant changes in medicine, public health, and cultural attitudes towards death and disease. The world has faced several pandemics since the Black Death, but none have had such a profound impact on human history. It is estimated to have killed between 75 to 200 million people across Europe and Asia in the 14th century. The cause of the Black Death is believed to be a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, which is carried by fleas that live on rodents such as rats. The disease was spread through fleas biting infected rats and then biting humans, as well as through direct contact with infected bodily fluids. The disease first appeared in China in the early 1330s and then spread along trade routes, eventually reaching Europe in 1347. The port city of Genoa was the first place in Europe to be affected by the disease, and from there, it quickly spread throughout the continent. The Black Death had a significant impact on medieval society, causing widespread panic and social upheaval. It is estimated to have killed up to 1/3 of the population of Europe, and its effects were felt for many years afterward. The disease was especially devastating in densely populated urban areas where sanitation was poor and living conditions were cramped. The population of England was reduced to about half of what it had been 100 years earlier. The Black Death caused the depopulation or total disappearance of about 1,000 villages in England alone. Monasteries were devastated by the disease, which passed quickly through the community since monks lived in close contact with one another. They also had many visitors passing through, allowing for more chances of it entering the community. There were several different forms of the disease, including bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic. The bubonic form was the most common and caused the characteristic symptoms of swollen lymph nodes, fever, and chills. The septicemic form of the disease could cause severe internal bleeding, while the pneumonic form affected the lungs and was highly contagious. Even those with money and power and the means to leave the areas affected were not immune from the plague. For instance, King Alfonso VII of Castile and Joan, the daughter of English King Edward III, died from the disease. There was no known cure for the Black Death at the time, and many people turned to religious and superstitious practices in an attempt to ward off the disease. Some people thought the disease was a manifestation of God's revenge. Flagellants, a medieval religious group, whipped themselves while praying for forgiveness. The popularity of these groups rose in Europe during the Black Death. However, over time, medical knowledge about the disease improved, and treatments such as bloodletting, herbal remedies, and quarantine measures were developed. During the time of the plague, the main approach to combating its spread was through the isolation of individuals who were either confirmed or suspected to have contracted the disease, as well as anyone who had come into contact with them. Initially, the isolation period was around 14 days, but later it was extended to 40 days. One of the most significant long-term impacts of the Black Death was its effect on European society. Public officials developed new sanitary systems, such as isolation hospitals and disinfection procedures in response to the Black Plague. Improvements in sanitation also encompassed the establishment of clean water supplies, proper garbage and sewage disposal, and food inspection. The large-scale loss of life caused significant economic and social disruption, leading to changes in labor practices, land ownership, and social hierarchies. The disease also had a profound impact on religious and cultural beliefs, with many people turning to radical religious movements in the aftermath of the pandemic. In conclusion, the Black Death was a devastating pandemic that had a profound impact on medieval society. Its causes, spread, and effects have been studied extensively by historians and scientists, and the lessons learned from this catastrophic event continue to inform our understanding of disease and public health today.